is Community Pulse on Radio 786 100.4 FM. Thank you so much for joining us. We're into the third and final hour, and it is Tuesday. So you know what we usually do during this time slot. Yes, it's Centerpiece. It's where we look at people making amazing differences in their unique ways. Welcome to Centerpiece. It's that piece that we create, or that which we embody as we learn from others. Now, as I said to you this morning, that we are going to be speaking to K Yende, also known as Sister K. She is affectionately known as Sister K. She is a John Maxwell certified coach. She's also a trainer, facilitator, and a speaker. The profound loss of a stillborn daughter at 39 weeks inspired her to write her first book. I never saw her eyes gaining from the pain of a loss. This book was followed by Blessed with Laughter, Journey to Seeing Her Eyes, where she shares her journey of faith, fertility challenges, and the emotional roller coaster of a rainbow pregnancy. Through her writing and ministry, Calypso helps others navigate personal challenges, rediscover their identity in religion, and embrace their God-given purpose. Please do join me in welcoming this morning founder and director of Sister Foundation, a sisterhood network that inspires, empowers, and supports girls and women to realize their true self-worth, maximize their potential, and fulfill their God-given purpose. Sister K, good morning and welcome. Lovely to have you in studio with us.
A very good morning to you too, Khadija, and a good morning to all the listeners who are joining in. It is such an honor and privilege to be with you all this morning.
And I was saying to you now off air that I wanted to just sort of touch on your bio, but then I realized that's going to take up half of the program. So I didn't want to go too much into that. But I do know that some of your qualifications include a BCom, that's in economics, that's honors. You hold a postgrad diploma in financial planning, a master of business leadership, a diploma in digital marketing, and then also a master of theology, specializing in practical theology. That is absolutely a mouthful. So take us back a little bit. You are still so young, and so take us back a little bit to where you were born and the schools you attended. What inspired you?
So, where was I born? You will not believe. I was born in a small town in the Free State called Qwaqwa. Many people don't even know where that is when I say it, but I was born and bred in the Free State, and I went to an Afrikaans high school.
Is that?
Yeah, I guess that's why I feel so at home when I'm in Cape Town.
Want ons praat Afrikaans?
Ja, ek praat mooi Afrikaans, yeah. I went to an Afrikaans high school, Wittenberg High School, and education was one of the greatest values that our parents passed on to us. You know, they sacrificed a lot to ensure that we got a good education. So I am privileged in that regard that I went to very good schools. From primary school, I was already attending a private school. So education is a grace, if I can call it that is on our family. Both my mom and my dad were both educators, and they are both graduates. So naturally, we would be expected to also invest in our education. So that's really how the education journey started. It's actually quite a funny story. When I first went to university, I wanted to go to a different university, and my dad tricked me into going where he wanted me to go. So I was very upset when I was there, and when I had to fill in the forms, and he was like, "What do you want to do?" I was like, I don't know. So he filled in the applications forms for me and even chose the course for me.
Oh my word. But so this was the first one. This was the economics
that
one.
Was the BCom in economics. But lo and behold, parents, I suppose God whispers to them the destiny of their children somehow. So I ended up enjoying it so much that I even did an honors after that, and I continued to do a master's in business leadership. when I began my corporate career as well, I was a financial advisor. So that's when I did the postgraduate in financial planning so that I could be a certified financial advisor. And the journey of education continues and interacts with my calling. When I was doing my master's in business leadership, I sensed a call that, God wanted me to know more about Him and my faith, and He prompted me to go and study theology. So that's why I've got so many qualifications. Then, after a master's degree, initial master's degree, then I had to start a junior degree again in theology. And then we did our theology. I was already in Cape Town at that time, but I did my theology at UNISA, and then I did the postgraduate, the honors at Stellenbosch, and I did the master's at Stellenbosch, and I'm currently a PhD student at Stellenbosch.
Wow, I'm just wondering, yes, because where did you possibly find the time to do all of those? Enrolled and at university, and writing and studying does take up a lot of time.
It does, but education has always been a part of my life. It's almost like I can't remember any time in my life where I was not a student.
Yeah.
I remember I did take a break once. For a year, and I didn't feel I was myself. I was like, no, this, like, not studying, not growing is not for me. And I think that's where my passion also for personal development,
of course,
came in, and the desire to see other people empowered as well. I believe that also has something to do with it, because I've seen for myself how investing in one's growth, how that helps one to live a fulfilling and empowered life. And I just want to see the same for the next person.
Yeah, and because you're loving it, you're not just sort of preaching it.
Yeah,
you're loving it. And I suppose because we live in this world where these various disciplines or these various areas of study are so compartmentalized. So if one thinks about business leadership or economics, and then one doesn't necessarily think about that same person being a theologian.
Yeah.
And it's the way that our education system is structured to make us not think in that way.
Yeah.
And I suppose hence it comes as a bit of a surprise, but very, very refreshing. And I mean, certainly putting lessons for us out there that being an engineer, for example, it's not mutually exclusive to being a social scientist as well.
Correct. So a lot of people, when I talk about my educational journey, they go like, so did you do all of that for nothing? And I'm like, no, not at all. I mean, as a theologian and a pastor now, leading a church, all of that knowledge that I gained, all that experience that I gained, it still serves in my ministry. I still use those skills. So everything it's like a 360,
of course,
so I always say that no experience is wasted. And that's how God works. He'll send you on a path, and sometimes you feel like, why didn't He direct me towards a theology degree in the first place? But I see how it was necessary for me to go through the path that I went through, because it's all coming together now, and I'm using all those skills and the knowledge that I gained.
Of course. Just earlier on this morning, we have this segment called Education Beyond 94, and I was speaking to a learning center, and exactly raising this idea around, again, in a modern society, education is often seen as a commodity, and a qualification is seen as a commodity rather than the way in which you describe it, the way what it meant in your life, impactful on the person also.
Correct.
It's something that becomes a part that the person, that Sister K also imbibes and entrenches, and it becomes part of her life, instead of you just gaining, or how it's often seen, where it's about gaining a piece of paper, and it's just about the outcomes and what that means for one.
Correct. I know one of the things that I believe about a degree, as an example, I say that it proves that you have the ability to learn. So you must still be versatile, and you can still learn in any other environment.
Yeah.
So I encourage young people also to say, just because you studied something and there are no opportunities specifically in that field, don't close yourself off to other possibilities, because the skills that you gained, you can still apply in any other field.
Yeah, of course. What is often referred to as soft skills, but yes, you're absolutely right. So for starters, in terms of one's character, one imagines like yourself being curious, because that's, of course, and being driven and being focused and having tenacity and resilience, all of those qualities, of course, it's essentially what drives you, or let's say what leads to you gaining this. But you mentioned something else also, Sister K, that's very, very important, that it seems to a large extent, along with education, that has shaped and informed so much of who you are and what you've done, and that is spirituality. How did that come about?
Sure. So it's quite, my journey is quite interesting. I was raised in a Christian family, but I knew about God in theory. I didn't have a personal relationship with God. It was only until I was a young adult that I really came to understand what having a relationship with God actually means. And I had a moment in my life that really transformed me. Sometimes when you just on your own, I was actually on my own, and I sensed God saying that He wants to do something with my life. I had a moment when I was reflecting on my life, and I was thinking, sure, I didn't always make the right choices. I didn't always make the right decisions. But for somehow life was working out. Things were just working in my life. And I just realized the love of God, the love that God had for me. And I realized that there must be more to me and more to my life than I was realizing at that point. And that's where I really started having or going on a journey to find my identity, who am I and what is my purpose. And I found that to be a very enriching life. When you accept Christ as Savior and Lord of your life, we say you are born again. I was literally really born again. It felt like all those academic achievements and the achievements that I had in my career, they didn't mean anything outside of what is the bigger purpose for my life. And I only found that in my relationship with God. So spirituality for me is the beginning of life, because we are spiritual beings, right? And the Bible tells us that when we're not connected, when we're not in a relationship with God, it means we are dead. So a person that is not alive spiritually, in other words, in a relationship with God, they might be walking, but they're actually dead. So it's key. Yeah.
Well, I can fully agree with the point around the fact that we are all of these facets simultaneously. The physical, the emotional, and the spirituality is an integral part of that. It's seemingly abstract, but how it shapes and informs the way we navigate the world, the way in which we make choices, how it shapes and informs the choices that we make, that those choices be aligned to our belief system. Of course, that is absolutely imperative. It's a facet, it's a component that often does get neglected, because again, in a sort of a liberal dominant narrative, where this idea that ought to be private and that's that's not for public consumption. Don't bring that into the public space. So really, you are as you alluding to, as you're saying, it's almost like you taking it away, such an integral part, leaving empty shells behind, empty shells that are going around in spaces, professional spaces and other spaces, devoid of that essence.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And it's unfortunate that we think about our spirituality in the same way that we think about politics, for example. I mean, the same argument that you are mentioning about how spirituality is a private thing, it's similar to how you would argue that, oh no, politics, stay away from it.
Yeah.
But they are worlds apart, and we shouldn't even think about them in the same way, because like we're saying, we are spiritual beings, we have souls, we live in bodies, so we cannot afford to neglect our spirituality, because that's the essence of who we are.
Of course, yeah, it really is, and that's why I said earlier on, that it's seemingly abstract. So much of us, or we judge ourselves, and society judges us on the external, on the physical manifestation of ourselves, but and then of course that gets neglected because it can't be quantified, the spiritual side, because it's abstract, it's unseen, but how it really shapes you, and how it makes you a person, a human being, that of course can't be quantified. We want to speak about your publications and the reasons for that, but we just about on 11:30. So let's take that break, Sister K.
Great
and
stuff.
then we'll continue after that. In studio with us this morning, Sister K Yende. She's affectionately known as Sister K. She's a coach, a trainer, facilitator, a speaker, author, and a lot of other things which you will hear about after the break. Stay tuned to 100.4 FM. Community Pulse on Radio 786 100.4 FM. Thank you for joining us at the time 11:32, and we're going into the second half of our centerpiece segment. I am Khadija Ajam, speaking to K Yende, affectionately known as Sister K. She is a coach, a trainer, facilitator, speaker, author. She's also founder and director of Sister Foundation, a sisterhood network that inspires, empowers and supports girls and women to realize their true self-worth, maximize their potential and fulfill their God-given purpose. Also has a range of qualifications, including a Master of Business Leadership, and we spoke about that before the break. Also spoke a little bit about the fact that education and spirituality really incredibly important components that largely shaped and informed sort of the choices that you made, Sister K. I wanted to speak a little bit also about the Sister K Foundation, but also your two publications that I mentioned right at the beginning. Perhaps a little bit around why the publications and why Sister K?
So both my books are a product of a very personal experience in my life. The first book, which I wrote, I Never Saw Her Eyes, was after going through losing my daughter at 39 weeks. She was stillborn. And then that was followed by multiple miscarriages. So I went through a process of healing. Losing a baby and struggling with fertility is something that can easily send one down a very dark path. And when I saw how God was able to heal me from that pain, and the process of finding purpose and meaning out of that experience, I thought, I need to share this. Because my husband and I, we lost our daughter in 2018. And the book was published in 2021, which was still just after lockdown and COVID, and a lot of people had lost loved ones. So there was hopelessness in the nation, and a lot of healing was needed. So God inspired me to write that book as a a message of hope, to reinforce that he was still a God of healing, and that even in those difficult circumstances, he was still God and there was still hope. So that's really what inspired the first book. It was a testimony of healing, and it was an encouragement to look at pain from a different perspective, because if we are all honest, we grow the most in difficult circumstances. You know, when everything is fine, we don't necessarily grow as much as we grow when we are in difficult situations. So that is, I never saw her eyes, gaining from the pain of loss. Now, God being God, in that book, there is a quotation where I say, I believe that I will still be a mother and I will have a baby. So fast forward to Blessed with Laughter, the journey to seeing her eyes. You know, just the titles tell a story. So I never saw her
just
eyes.
The title gives me goosebumps.
And then Blessed with Laughter, the journey to seeing her eyes. So the second book is God Did It. It's a testimony of God's faithfulness. It's an encouragement to other couples who are going through fertility challenges to say there is hope. And I also realized, sure, pregnancy on its own, it's hard. But a rainbow pregnancy, like being pregnant after having previously experienced loss, it's even harder. So Blessed with Laughter is a companion to couples who try again and who conceive, because you would think that once you conceive, the problems are over, but with a rainbow baby, it's almost like that's when the real battle begins. Like, how do you still enjoy your pregnancy journey despite the anxiety that come as a result of the previous losses? So I always say that Blessed with Laughter is a companion to someone who is going through a similar situation, to say, here is how, by God's grace, I was able to deal with the anxieties and still enjoy the pregnancy and look at it as a blessing. And so I go through the first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, even the fourth neglected trimester, which is the first 3 months of the baby. Because even then, you still like, when she's sleeping, like, are you still breathing, you know?
Okay?
So every stage of pregnancy has its challenges, and they are just amplified if you have seen the negative side. And so that's a companion to say, there are ways with God by your side to put that fear in its place and still focus on the blessing that a rainbow baby is. So that's really Blessed with Laughter. How do you deal with life and death at the same time?
Well, and many would say spousal relationship as well, a marriage, and the amount of stress and strain that relationship takes. You were saying earlier on about growing through tough times, yes, in our personal capacity. But something like this, I cannot even imagine a baby, let's say, born from two people, and having to navigate that.
It's a difficult one. It's really a difficult one. I mean, if I go back to how we lost Boo Boo, as we affectionately called her. Her name was Nombuso. It was a normal Sunday, and we went to church as usual. I'm 39 weeks along. We had our gynae appointment on the Thursday. And on Sunday after the service, I realized I had not felt her move because she was very active, especially during church services. And my husband and I, we went via the hospital on our way home, or we thought we were on our way home. Anyway, we got there and we got the news that no parent should ever have to experience, I'm sorry, there is no heartbeat. So it just came out of nowhere. as a shock like that.
The Thursday at the gynae appointment, everything was fine.
The Thursday at the gynae appointment, everything was fine. And on the same week, on Sunday, I am sorry, there's no heartbeat. So as a couple, you have been planning the arrival of, she was supposed to be our first baby as a married couple. You've bought the stuff. You are ready for homecoming, only to come back home empty-handed. And instead of having a celebration to welcome the baby, you find yourselves planning a funeral. And this is something that I think is particularly even hard for men, because we focus our attention on the woman, right? Because she was the one that was pregnant, and everyone is sympathizing with her, and we neglect the man who is the wife's greatest supporter. And so what we don't realize is that in times like those, yes, it's important to give the mother support, but I would argue that even more important to give the father support, because the mother wholly relies on the father in that time. But if the father is not given the proper support, and he needs to be strong for his wife, he needs to be strong for himself, he needs to be there for everyone, it's a very difficult situation, and it can have tensions and create problems even in marriages. So in my first book, I dedicated an entire chapter to my husband's journey of healing. And that was also to say, fertility issues is not a woman's issue. It's a couple issue, because it's two people who are pregnant with a dream. When you are pregnant and the pregnancy, you do not see it through, it's like the death of a dream. So as much as the mother is already thinking about breastfeeding the baby, and when the baby goes to school the first day, same with the father. He's also thinking, when my child turns 21, when I walk my baby down the aisle, and so forth. So I shared on our journey because I realized that sometimes difficult experiences like this can mean an end to a marriage. But by God's grace, my husband and I were so intentional that we were not going to allow this to drift us apart. Rather, we found that it was one of the greatest things in our lives that brought us together, because it's an experience that we share together with no one else. It's a loss. It's something that is so personal and so I almost said sacred, because we are the only two that experienced it, that knows what it meant to lose the child. So that's an encouragement to couples there, to say, don't let difficult seasons tear you apart, but rather see it as a opportunity for even more intimacy, because now you share pain. Pain is so intimate.
Yes, of course.
And when you share it as a couple, allow it to bring you closer together and not to tear you apart.
Yeah, so true. I mean, if one thinks about, as you said, the worst words that a parent ought to hear, that there's no heartbeat or your child is not alive anymore. But in this case, what did you say her name's? Boo Boo?
Yeah, Boo Boo.
In this case, it's the joy that you and your husband shared with her. That joy was still, you knew that her life was celebrated, even if she was in your home, and you knew the joys that you had, feeling her kick, but it was still confined to the two of you sharing with her. And so of course, but on the other hand, yes, one realizes that does happen, where that type of trauma just becomes too much for that relationship to be. I suppose it again speaks to what you said earlier on, to if everything that one does is rooted in spirituality.
Yes.
If one sees this as it's God's will, and work from there, but also what you did as a result of that in the publications, and then of course Sister K as well.
Yes. So one of the things as a woman that gets challenged when you are struggling with fertility is your self-worth, right? Because as a woman, you're supposed to be able to have.
It's taken for granted.
It's taken for granted. I mean, young women do it, even older women do it. So what's wrong with you?
Should be able to be a baby, yes, of course.
So that was one of the greatest struggles as well I had as a woman, and bringing my spirituality back into it. It gave me a beautiful opportunity to seek the meaning of life again. That's what we do when we're faced with death. But also, I could have easily also died. Why am I still alive? So what's my purpose? God, what do you want to do with my life? And instead of continuing to ask why me, my questioning changed to, so what do you want to do through me? So as an outcome of that rigorous process of rediscovering my identity, my worth, my purpose, I sensed that God really wanted me to pour into the lives of women and girls particularly. So that's when I registered the Sister K Foundation officially. Although I had already started mentoring young girls from as far as back as 2013, I was just doing it in my family. So after that experience, I sensed that I needed to do that on a bigger scale. And that's when I registered the Sister K Foundation, which is really a sisterhood. And at the heart of it, it's the importance of older women pouring into the lives of younger women. It's about mentorship. So I mentor young girls, and I also coach women who want to mentor, because a lot of women say, I want to mentor young girls, but I don't know what to say. How do I do it? So I share my experiences in that regard, and that's really at the heart of what we do at Sister K Foundation. But because of now my journey of becoming an author and working with women and working with girls and seeing the richness of stories and how people's personal stories can transform, inspire, and empower other people, and people saying, I've got a story, I don't know how to write, that then gave birth to Sister K Publishers, which is a service under Sister K Foundation to help other people with stories. And I believe everybody has a story, right? Of course. To also write their stories and package it in a book that they are happy and proud to share with the world. So yeah, that's Sister K Foundation and the publishing services of it. They all come from experience and serving.
Do you think, and again, if as I said earlier on, now it's not just about talking that, but you're walking it as well with the publishers and putting the books out there. And when you speak about how sharing experiences and how as human beings, but how difficult was it for you to do that? I mean, you're talking about deeply, deeply personal moments, and yes, by virtue of putting these structures in place, and of course encouraging people to do the same and tell their stories. But how difficult was it for you? Was it difficult to put all of those things out there? You mentioned now, for example, as a woman, now you are so incredibly accomplished in terms of qualifications, in terms of work and so on. And then there's this experience.
Yeah.
So all of those qualifications are out there, and professionally you're doing all these things, and it looks so good on paper as well. But now deep down you have this.
It wasn't easy. I won't downplay it and say it was. It was not easy for all the reasons that you mentioned, but also for the reason of being a pastor, people come to me for prayer, right?
Yeah.
They come to me for counseling, for answers to their problems. So one of the questions I get, particularly with my first book, because I published it. When I published it, I wasn't pregnant yet. So it didn't even seem like an answer was on the horizon. And people say, but why would you put yourself out there like that?
Exactly.
Especially in your role, that people look up to you, even in a spiritual capacity.
And these are almost like raw things. It's almost like wounds that you're putting out there.
Yeah. So what I said is, I realized it's easy to come out with a testimony when you have it, you've seen it. It's easy to say, this is where I was and God did it, and here is where I am. But for me, it was important to say, this is where I was. I'm not where I want to be yet, but my faith tells me that I will be. So it was almost like I was saying, God, for your name's sake, because I've gone out there and I've said that you can do it. For your name's sake, you had better come through for me. So yeah, no, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, but I made a resolve to say, even if I don't have a baby, God, you will still be God in my life. In the Bible, there's a story about 3 Hebrew boys who are thrown into the fire, and they say, our God will save us. But even if he doesn't save us, he is still our God. So I believe it's when you get to that spiritual level where you love God because of who he is, not because of what he can do for you.
That's so beautifully said. Yeah, that's so beautifully said, and I suppose putting it out there in, and this is maybe why so many in your congregation have asked, because we as people of faith, yes, of course we are taught to speak a certain way, we're conditioned to be a certain way, and then during our times of difficulty, when you're really, really struggling, something, for example, like that, I mean, we stillborn baby, fertility challenges, and the various other challenges that people experience, and then we feel almost embarrassed to admit that we have our moments where you just think, but God, are you not seeing me? Am I too flawed? Is that why you are not extending your mercy towards me? And so those deep, dark moments, and of course, as you say, that leads to growth. One realizes when you navigate difficult waters that after all is said and done, there's this one being that is there, ever present, all the time, that doesn't compromise on you and your well-being. And so everybody else is fallible. So that was so beautifully said. Thank you so much for that. I think we have about 2 or 3 minutes left. And
already?
So can you believe it? Can you believe it?
Wow.
So your concluding words, perhaps also in light of the fact that we are in Women's Month, and you said earlier on about particularly younger women, that experience difficulties. We live in a country that is so violent, in a world that is so violent towards women. So perhaps just in our final 2 minutes, your message.
Final 2 minutes, my message to every woman out there: you must realize that you are loved, man. You are deeply, deeply loved. God loves you. You are a precious jewel. I was talking earlier on about how I struggled because of my challenges with my self-worth. I realized that our self-worth is not a result of our accomplishments or our successes or our failures. On the opposite side, we do not become valuable because we are performing or not performing. We are valuable because we are special. We are valuable because God created us for a special purpose. So I just want to say to women, you are precious jewels, and your life matters to God. So no matter what you are going through, just realize you are loved, you are a precious jewel, and you matter to God. And no matter what, things will work out, man.
And we'll continue supporting each other.
Absolutely.
In the best way that we can. Sister K, what an absolute pleasure and privilege. I feel like there's a lot more for us to peel off and to learn. And who knows, maybe in future we can have you back on and we can chat a little bit more about that.
Love to. Absolutely would love to. Thank you so much, Khadija. And thank you so much to your listeners as well. And those who are looking at me here, I see all of you. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Lovely to have you. Have a beautiful Tuesday. Thank you so much. That was Sister K, also known as K Yende. She's a range of things, as I said. Reading a bio is going to take up a lot of time, but she is the founder and director of the Sister Foundation. She's a speaker, an author, a pastor, a coach, a trainer, a facilitator, and we loved having this conversation with the Community Pulse. Do stay tuned to 100.4 FM. So from myself, Khadija Ajam, on behalf of the entire team, we look forward to meeting again tomorrow morning for Community Pulse. That is just after 9. Until then, stay safe. Assalamu alaikum.